नमः सोमाय च रुद्राय च नमः ताम्राय चारुणाय च नमः शृङ्गाय च पशुपतये च नमः उग्राय च भीमाय च नमो अग्रे वदाय च दूरे वदाय च नमो अन्ध्रे च हनीयसे च नमो वृक्षेभ्यो हरिकेशेभ्यो नमस्ताराय नमः शम्भवे च मयो भवे च नमः शङ्कराय च मयस्कराय च नमः शिवाय च शिवतराय च नमः तीर्थ्याय च कूल्याय च नमः आर्याय च वार्याय च नमः प्रतरणाय चोत्तरणाय च नमः आतार्याय च लाद्याय च नमः षष्ट्याय च भेन्याय च नमः सिकत्याय च प्रभात्याय च ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Om Shri Sai Ram. I would like to request the dignitaries to light the ceremonial lamp to begin Professor Vishwanath Pandit Memorial Lecture for today. Asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Offering our reverential obeisance at the lotus feet of our beloved founder Chancellor Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, I would like to warmly welcome the dignitaries gracing this occasion of Professor V. Pandit Memorial Lecture being organized by the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. Venerable Vice-Chancellor Sir, Professor B. Raghavendra Prasad, our distinguished guest of honor for today, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran, Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, Director of the Prasanthi Nilayam Campus, Professor Gauri Shankar, Head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences and Dean of Student Welfare, Professor G. Raghavendra Raju, Dean of Sciences, Professor Sri Vidya, respected Mrs. Krishna Pandit Ma'am, I welcome all our faculty members, guests, staff, and students who have gathered here, both in person and joining us virtually across the campuses, and the alumni brothers and sisters. Professor Vishwanath Pandit Sir found in this institute not just a place of work, but a home for his deepest calling. Building the Department of Economics here was for him more of an offering and less of an achievement. Those who studied under him still speak of a man whose brilliance never overshadowed his humility, who saw every milestone of this department as Bhagwan's doing and himself merely as an instrument. He gave this institute his intellect, yes, but more than that, he gave it his devotion. It is that quiet, loving spirit of scholarship surrendered in service that we gather to remember and honor Professor Pandit sir today. Moving on to the proceedings, it is now my pleasure to invite Professor Raghavendra Raju sir, Head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences and Dean of Student Welfare, to deliver the welcome address and set up the context for today's memorial lecture. Thank you.
Om Shri Sai Ram. Offering our collective pranams at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Lord, Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Varu, esteemed invited speaker, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran sir, the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, revered Vice-Chancellor, Professor B. Raghavendra Prasad sir, Director of the Prasanthi campus, the Deans, Elders, Faculty members, research scholars, most dearest students, and all those who have joined us virtually, a loving saram to one and all, and good morning. On behalf of the faculty and the students of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, it's both a proud privilege and also deeply humbling honor for me to stand before you today to welcome you all to the second memorial lecture instituted in the loving memory of Professor Vishwanath Pandit, who was a great teacher, economist, mentor, and above all, a true instrument of Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba Varu. We gather here today not merely to remember a man who held the highest academic offices, but to celebrate a life that quietly, steadily, and selflessly shaped this department into what it is today. As we begin, let us take a few moments to remember the man in whose honor we all have assembled here. Professor Pandit's journey to Prasanthi began fittingly in service as a Sevadal in 1980s, long before he would go on to become the 8th Vice-Chancellor of this very institute. That journey from service to stewardship tells us everything we need to know about the man, what he was. Fondly called the Delhi Professor by Bhagavan Baba himself. I still remember at this juncture, way back in March 2001, after the interviews, Bhagavan had come to the portico and Swami was, if I can use the word, very happy, kind of excited. He kept telling Delhi Professor Vastunadu, Delhi Professor Vastunadu. So we didn't know whom Bhagavan was actually referring to. Then Bhagavan went on to say that Professor Vishwanath Pandit from Delhi School of Economics is coming to Puttaparthi to set up this economics department. So that was the year that MA Economics has started in the year 2001, and we are currently celebrating its Silver Jubilee celebrations. So Bhagavan would fondly call him as the Delhi Professor. Professor Pandit came to us with a stature that a very few of us could actually match him. Professor Pandit was a student of Delhi School of Economics, a doctoral scholar under the Nobel laureate Professor Lawrence Klein at the University of Pennsylvania, a colleague of Dr. Manmohan Singh, Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, and Professor Amartya Sen. Professor Pandit could have graced any institution in the world, but he chose to give the best years of his life to this institute for over 4 decades. To begin with, he was associated as a part-time faculty and eventually turned out to be a full-time member of this institute. Professor Pandit built things that were meant to last forever. He was amongst the architect of the Department of Management in 86. He brought the BSc Honors in Economics way back in 1991 And as I mentioned, in 2001-2, he single-handedly established the Department of Economics at this institute, a department that today stands as a testament to its vision and celebrating its silver jubilee. Professor Pandit, as head of the Department of Economics and Dean of Humanities, and as a coordinator of the very first NAC accreditation cycle way back in 2002, which earned this institute the highest A++ grade, and UGC called it as the crest jewel in the universities, amongst the universities. And later on, in the year 2008, Bhagwan appointed him as the Vice-Chancellor. Professor Pandit gave form and substance to Bhagwan's vision of Sri Sathya Sai values-based integral education. It was under his leadership that this institute organized the landmark conference, namely Ethics and the World of Finance, way back in 2009, bringing together the finest minds in Indian finance and economics in the aftermath of global financial crisis. That was the need of the hour at that point of time. A conference that in many ways reflected his own life's conviction that economics without ethics is incomplete. Yet, for all his scholarships, over 100 research papers, 9 authored books, lifetime academic achievements, distinctions, and yet this man considered him as the greatest achievement is none of these for his scholarship, but simply because Bhagwan led him to be close to him and made him an instrument for building the Department of Economics at this juncture. For the want of the time, I'm not going to the details. I personally had lot of experiences, and he was my mentor, sharing the same room for a very long period of time. So this is what the true measure of Professor Pandit is. A genius mind housed in a heart of profound surrender and gentle humility. It is in this honor and to keep alive the values he stood for that this institute instituted this memorial lecture series. Today, we are privileged to host the second lecture in this series. It gives me immense pleasure to once again welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran sir, the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, where he occupies one of the most significant positions in India's economic policy making of today. As a Chief Economic Advisor, he plays a very pivotal role in shaping the Government of India's economic vision and is the principal author of the Economic Survey of India, a document that all economic students cherish to read, which charts the course of our nation's economic thinking each year. His career has spanned academia, global investment management, and public policy, giving him a rare vantage point from which to view the India's economic journey, from both within the corridors of the policy and from the wider world looking in. It is only fitting that a memorial lecture honoring Professor Pandit, a pioneer of macroeconomic policy modeling in India and himself an advisor to the governments and institutions across the world, should today feature a speaker like Dr. Nageswaran sir's stature, continuing that very tradition of rigorous, policy-relevant economic thought. Dr. Nageswaran will address us on the broad theme of Viksit Bharat 2047. As India stands at the threshold of its 100th year of independence, the vision of Viksit Bharat, a developed India, is not merely an aspiration, but a roadmap that demands clarity of thought, honesty about our challenges, and confidence in our prospects. There could be no more appropriate subject for this occasion and no more qualified voice to illuminate it for us. Professor Pandit spent his life bridging rigorous economic scholarship with deeper values for which Bhagwan always stood for. Today's lecture on a theme central to India's future and delivered by one of the country's foremost economic minds is a fitting tribute to that legacy. With these few words, I once again welcome you all for Professor Vishwanath Pandit second memorial lecture. Thank you. Sai Ram.
Thank you, Professor Raju sir, for that warm welcome and setting the context and showing us the glimpse of Professor Pandit sir's illustrious career. It now gives me great honor to introduce our distinguished speaker for today's memorial lecture. Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran is the 18th Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Before assuming this role, he built a distinguished career spanning academia, financial markets, and public commentary. From 1994 to 2011, he worked in macroeconomic and financial markets research for international financial institutions in Switzerland and Singapore, holding senior leadership roles at UBS, Credit Suisse, and Julius Baer. He is also a prolific writer and thinker for 15 years. From 2007 to 2022. He wrote a weekly column in Mint every Tuesday and has co-authored 4 books on derivatives, global finance, and India's economic growth. Dr. Nageswaran earned his doctoral degree in economics from the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 1994, and his work on exchange rate behavior, and he holds a postgraduate diploma in management from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, received in 1985. Dr. Nageswaran will be speaking to us today on Viksit Bharat 2047, Challenges and Prospects, India's Economic Prospects and Challenges up to 2047. Please join me in welcoming Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran.
Saram sir, can you please unmute the mic, sir?
Om Sairam, Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Many thanks to the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning for inviting me to share my thoughts. You must believe me when I say I would have very much like to be physically present there. But as you are very well aware, under the circumstances in the world today, after I finish this engagement with you, there are 2 physical meetings I have to attend here and another virtual session to speak at 6:30 p.m. as well. So both these sessions this morning at 10:30 with you and the evening one, which would have been in Hyderabad, I would have for both these occasions, I would have very much liked to be there in person. But the 2 important meetings in between that I have to attend here in Delhi have made me stay behind. Therefore, please accept my sincere apologies for not being there in person. I would have very much liked to be there. I hope there will be another opportunity. Thank you once again for inviting me, and I would like to speak on this topic of India's economic challenges and prospects up to 2047. I just want to know whether you will be moving the slides.
Yes, sir. We'll be moving the slides.
Okay. Yeah. Next slide. Thank you. So I want to set the context for India for the next 20 years. On August 15th, India will be entering its 80th year after independence. And in 20 years, we will be entering the 100th year, culminating on August 15, 2047 as a centenary year. The context for India in the next 20 years is going to be a challenging one compared to, let's say, the period that China found itself, 1980 to 2010, when the world was much more benign, or when Japan and East Asia were growing between 1950 and 1990. Geopolitics is going to be very contentious, fragmented, even violent. We are seeing it quite regularly these days, ever since 2022 Russia-Ukraine war started. China and the United States are in a race to establish themselves as the most leading power and the important power in the world. One is a status quo power, the United States. The other is an aspiring power. While the President of the United States is willing to probably accommodate the rise of China at this point, we don't know whether that is indeed the case for the entire United States, but he thinks he may have to accommodate their rise. It is not at the same time the United States is also doing certain things to delay the rise of China. On its part, China is a rising hegemon, which is trying to establish its own standards, its own sphere of influence in the world. And countries like India will increasingly find themselves sandwiched between these 2 major superpowers. The second element is choke points weaponized. World in the period of globalization between 1980 and 2015, world began to depend on efficient supply chains dispersed all over. No longer a particular item was manufactured entirely in one place. The world adopted specialization. Even a small pocket device like iPhone had to be assembled in multiple places and finally put together in China. Now it is being put together in India, some of it. So efficiency was the norm and supply chains were dispersed all over the world. That is changing now. Countries do not want to send goods to other countries if they deem them hostile. China and Japan are two examples. China doesn't want to send rare earths and critical minerals to Japan. There is export licensing. The United States on paper doesn't want to send semiconductor chip. Semiconductor chip equipments are also under restrictions. Chemicals also. So supply chains which depend on continuous reliable supply from other parts of the world will no longer be reliable. Therefore, all of us have to find a reliable suppliers, even if it is costlier, or we have to manufacture them inside the country. That won't happen overnight. The third dimension is related to second dimension, China's manufacturing scale. China has become a manufacturing giant in the last 20 to 30 years. It cannot be so easily competed against, and it has got the effect of undermining manufacturing in Indonesia in textiles, ceramic and automotive parts in Thailand, and electronics in Malaysia. And for India, we have more than $100 billion trade deficit with China. So to be able to compete with China and protect our industry and even grow manufacturing industries, which India needs, is not going to be easy because China competes on price. And end users in manufacturing industries find it convenient to import from low-cost location. They don't understand the second risk I mentioned, which is supply chain choke points. You may be able to buy today from China, but there is no guarantee tomorrow they will send you the same goods if you want them. So 2 and 3 together make it very difficult for countries to grow their manufacturing and create employment. Number 4 is climate variability. Climate has become volatile, unpredictable. The amount of rainfall you used to get in 1 month, you now get in 3 to 4 days. That means flooding risk, water running away to the sea. The earth does not absorbing that water. And there's also heat waves in Europe last summer and this summer. This summer has been longer, the heat wave. So how do we adapt to it? Should India also control emissions like the Western countries do, or do we have to focus on controlling the impact of emissions that are already out there in the atmosphere? If you want to go big way into solar and wind across the country, are our electricity grids ready for it? How much of investment we need to make? And even in solar energy, we don't manufacture everything. Polysilicon, wafers, battery storage, battery chemistry, all of this we still depend on imports from China. Can we be assured of supplies of all these items before you can generate solar energy in a massive nationwide scale? What about the energy intensity of producing the very ingredients that go into solar and wind energy? I'll give you an example. To generate 1 gigawatt of wind power, you require 2,866 tons of copper. The yield of copper mine is, if you take out 1,000 kilograms or 1 ton of copper, you will get 6 kilograms of copper out of it. If you extract 1 ton, 1,000 kilograms of ore, copper ore, the actual copper you will get out of it is 6 kilograms out of 1,000, 0.6%. So, I'm sorry. Sorry for the interruption. So, to be able to generate 2,866 tons of copper, we need to extract 480,000 tons of iron ore, copper ore. And that requires energy. And then the last item, demographic dividend. We say India's median age is below 30, but we need to educate them. We need to skill them. We need to find them jobs. And more importantly, we need to keep them healthy. Today, physical health and mental health in India are under challenge. Screen time, social media usage are making youngsters mentally anxious, prone to depression and suicidal thoughts, and also loneliness. Some of the diseases that came into the West because of prosperity are coming to India before we actually become prosperous. Obesity and diabetes. So these are the important challenges that today's developed countries or even China did not face when they were becoming developed. So we have a very big task ahead of us. We need to understand this context. Next slide. Next slide. Now we go into India's current situation. India's macro position is quite strong. Post-COVID, we are one of the very few economies that have managed to grow at 7.7%. 7.7% is the growth rate of last year, but we have been able to grow at more than 7% since COVID ended. We have been able to bring down the budget deficit. In the year of COVID, it was 9.2%. This year, we are targeting 4.3%. It may be slightly higher because of the war in Persian Gulf, higher oil price, higher fertilizer prices. But in general, we have brought it down from 9.2% all the way down to 4.4 last year, and this year targeting 4.3. Government debt was 92% of, government debt went to 70% of GDP for the union government. During the COVID year, we have brought it down to around 60%, and we are bringing it down to 50% by the end of the decade. Right now, we are at 55.6%. And on top of it, we have a very strong banking system right now. The banking system went through a lot of trouble last decade, 2011 to 20. Now it is stronger. Government is putting up a lot of infrastructure, capital expenditure, highways, metro rail, power generation, airports, expansion of port, harbor, freight handling capacity, you name it, semiconductor mission. So the government is investing in all important infrastructure areas. The state governments are also consolidating the deficit and spending on infrastructure. And multidimensional poverty measured by Niti Aayog, 250 million people have been lifted out of multidimensional poverty. But there are important vulnerabilities. I don't want to mention them here. On the right side, we will go into them later. Some of it I already talked to you about, but that is exactly what we are going to go into the subsequent slides. Next slide. What are India's priorities for the next 2 decades? I mentioned 6 of them here, and I will try to go through them in the next half an hour or so. The list is very clear. I don't need to read it out. Import dependence, manufacturing, agriculture, etc. I hope you have gotten an idea of the 6 areas which I think are important. In fact, I would like to remind the teachers and students, other dignitaries here, to, whenever they get time, to get a copy of the Economic Survey 25-26, which was published on January 29th. The entire economic survey is available for free download in the website of the Ministry of Finance. It's an important read for both students and teachers of economics and public policy. So next slide. What are the key areas we are going to focus on, starting with in the import dependence reduction? Please remember, as we go through every slide, what I said at the very beginning, those 5 important challenges we have from the global context. You can't depend on the world to send you goods and services. The world has become less friendly. So we depend on a very critical element of energy for the rest of the world, from the rest of the world. Crude oil, petroleum, liquid petroleum gas, cooking gas, natural gas, ammonia and sulfur, which go to make fertilizer. All these things we keep importing. How much our import share? More than 50% in almost all these items, except fertilizer, DAP fertilizer. And the Strait of Hormuz, about which all of us are now familiar, is an important choke point for India. Even the Red Sea choke point has been coming under threat by Houthis in the last 3-4 days. Therefore, India faces extra vulnerability because of high import dependence and half of it coming through the important choke point. And then whatever happens in the Gulf also has impact on remittances coming into India from Indian workers located there. Next slide. It is not only energy products. Today, we want to do semiconductors. We want to make chip. We want to make batteries for storage. We depend on imports of nickel and tin and copper. Remember, the entire country wants to create data centers because we want Indian data to stay in India. Data centers require a lot of power and water, and also for cabling for copper to bring power from the grid to the consumption center, like data centers. And we only make 2/3 of copper that we need. And the need for copper in the world will be exploding because of all this electricity intensive technological growth we are experiencing. So we have to create buffer. We have to create for the rainy day. It is not just one day, for the rainy days or the rainy 2 decades before the world becomes more trusting and peaceful again. We need to create strategic storage buffer for crude oil, for natural gas, petroleum gas, sulfuric acid, ammonia, other fertilizers, even pharmaceutical ingredients, food items. And then these kinds of industrial metals, base metals, iron ore. So we have to create storage for some 20-30 commodities. We need to create space for them. We need to find the financial resources for them, which means our current budget priorities have to change in the union government and in the state government. This is going to be a very important task. This was not important until about 2015 or so. Slowly in the last 10 years, the importance of having our own buffer has become very, very critical. Next slide. And the importance of creating these buffers is underscored by this slide. This is from an article in the Financial Times appearing just recently. On the left side, you see the important rare earth which China processes. You see, rare earths are available in many parts of the world, not only in China, but the processing capacity is predominantly in China. In Busan, in South Korea, President Trump and President Xi met last year and had a conversation that China will not disrupt supply of rare earths, which America's auto companies and the military, the defense establishment needs. But look at the drop in the supply in 2025, even after the agreement with the US President, China has not been supplying them. On the right side, all of you can read, one Japanese executive is saying that China supplies the bare minimum and not in a very predictable manner. They will supply to those countries from whom they can get something. They depend on Japan for many things. That is why with Japan, they cannot afford to fully stop supplying them. For India, the import of goods by China is only $17 billion. They can easily find replacement. India does not have the same kind of leverage that Japan has with China. That is the other important point. I'll come to that when we come to manufacturing. We have to create leverage. We have to make certain things which the world will absolutely need. Without that, we will not have leverage in conversations, in negotiations. So China is going to continue to be an unreliable supplier, and therefore we need buffers, and this will also play into manufacturing aspirations of India. Next slide. And this has implications for our economy. Those of you students of economics will understand balance of payments, current account deficit, etc. When a country imports more than what it exports, when a country has to pay more money to foreigners in interest and dividends and for education fees, health fees, etc., because our students go there compared to foreign students coming into India. So the net balance is called the current account balance. Trade and invisibles, as we call them. And they have to be financed by attracting foreign exchange. If we can't finance it, then there will be a current account deficit. This slide shows you India's trade deficit. Only one country in this list of 8 to 9 countries has a widening trade deficit, and that country is India. Compared to 1980, we are importing much more than what we are exporting. Yes, we have a surplus in services exports, but this is only for goods. $333 billion is the trade deficit in goods, in manufacturing items. Of course, bulk of it is because of oil and gold. But even if you take out oil and gold, India's trade deficit in goods is 4%. Including oil, it is 8% of GDP. Take away oil, it becomes 5% of GDP. Take away gold, it becomes 3.5% to 4% of GDP. So even if you exclude oil and gold, we still have a trade deficit. We don't make enough. We don't make everything we need. We have to import. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. But in today's world, you have to be able to export to pay for the imports, or you should remain an attractive investment destination. You need to attract foreign exchange to pay for the imports. That is the critical message. Next slide. This is what I mentioned to you, that even without gold and oil, our trade deficit is $150 to $160 billion, 4% of GDP. So it is not only about oil and gold. Next slide. And the second important point we need to realize, what this slide shows you is for China. Next slide will show you India. When the economy keeps growing, please go back to the previous slide. When the economy keeps growing, the blue line is per capita GDP of China, which has gone from nothing to $13,000 per capita per person in the country. On the right side is the import of China, total imports that China itself has to do. Both are growing in tandem, growing together. That is inevitable. No matter how good you become in manufacturing, you will continue to make more and more import as you are growing. Next slide will show you for India. Whether it is total goods and services or only goods, you can see that India also has the same situation. And it is true for the whole world. You can go back and look at European countries' history. When you are growing, you will need to import much more. And therefore, you have to pay for them. I repeat, you have to pay for them through either exports or through attracting foreign investment, or a combination of the two. So that is why if you are not able to attract the foreign investment, and if you are not able to export, then the currency will become weaker and weaker and remain weak. So this year's economic survey, we covered all of this in the chapter on manufacturing, in the chapter on the external sector, how manufacturing is very critical for the Indian rupee. Unless we make things more and more in the country and keep the trade deficit not at 4%, excluding oil and excluding gold, and bring it down even for energy matter, we have to become self-sufficient in energy. It is critical that we focus on making goods that we can sell to the world. Manufacturing is going to be critical. But remember, becoming a manufacturing country is not easy because of the very first slide you saw. That is the challenge we find ourselves in. Next slide. And this is the balance of payments. The blue bar is the current account deficit, which I explained to you 1 minute ago, 2 minutes ago. The orange color bar is the capital inflow. That is why it is positive. It's above the line. Current account is a deficit. It is below the line. In general, when the capital inflows are larger than the current account deficit, you are in good shape. You're able to pay for the imports. You're able to pay for the school fees that Indian students pay abroad to universities. You are able to pay for your foreign travel. You have foreign exchange to pay for your elders' treatment overseas. So when the capital flows are ample, current account deficit can be financed. But in 22, 23, because of the Ukraine war, oil price went up. The current account deficit went to $68 billion, and the capital inflows were only $58 billion. We had to pay the difference from our foreign exchange reserves. 24, 25, and 25, 26, you can see the orange color bar becoming smaller and almost disappearing in 25, 26, which means capital inflows after subtracting what Indians invest abroad. Because when foreigners bring in money as foreign direct investment, some of the investors from previous years will be withdrawing their capital also. They will be taking profits. So on a net basis, foreign investments came down to a trickle in 25, 26 and also began to come down in 24, 25 itself. That is why in the last 1.5 years or so, the Indian rupee has been weaker. We need to find the dollars. If you can't find dollars to pay for your imports, then the price you have to pay for the dollar goes up. When something is in short supply, the price goes up. Dollar is in short supply for India, and therefore the price of dollar expressed in Indian rupee terms is going up. That is the reason why. It is not enough for India to have lower inflation because exchange rates are determined by inflation differential. Some of you would have studied in your classes. Purchasing power parity. Inflation differential matters. Inflation difference between India and the US matters for the long run value of the Indian rupee. But in the short run, the supply and demand for dollars matters. And for that, we need to manufacture. Next slide. What do we manufacture? I also told you from the slide on Japanese-Chinese relationship. Remember the slide on the rare earth. Japanese executive saying that they give us rare earths as and when they want. It is not predictable, it is not reliable, but China is not fully discontinuing supply because they need things from Japan. But India does not have any of these things on your screen. These are the important ingredients that go into semiconductor chip manufacturing. They are the ones without which Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, they make almost all semiconductor chip in the world, especially the high-tech ones that go into AI, GPU, NVIDIA. NVIDIA GPUs are made in TSMC. Most of the high-end CPU chips we use in our computers and laptops are made in TSMC. Of course, Samsung makes it, Hynix make it, but the high-tech RAM, random access memory chips are made in Taiwan and Korea, but predominantly in Taiwan. But it is not enough just to make chip. You can be an indispensable country in the world, not necessarily only everybody has to make semiconductor chip. You can also make other things that go into the manufacture of the chip. I'll give you an example. There are 60 industrial gases that go into manufacturing a semiconductor chip. Taiwan depends on China for all these 60 industrial gases. Without them, semiconductor chip cannot be made. And if you have not read Chris Miller, his book, The Chip War, you should read that. So the point of this slide is India needs to find a place to park itself in this semiconductor production ecosystem. It could be just one example. It could be in any high-tech item because those are difficult to replace. How do we get into it, sir? You may ask. Of course, it is not going to be easy. It will take time. You need to invest in R&D today so that 5 years later, 10 years later, you will be able to succeed. Or you acquire small German and Japanese and other European companies which are now struggling to remain in existence because the original founders are becoming older, the children are not interested, and those countries and those companies will be easily taken over by Chinese companies or by venture capitalists and private equity players from the United States. So India has to try and position itself in these high-tech areas, both by investing today in R&D. Indian companies have to do that with some government support. Secondly, our companies should go and look for acquiring small and micro and medium enterprises, high-tech enterprises in Japan, Europe, Korea, etc., because their countries are aging rapidly. There is nobody to run these companies which have been running for the last 60 to 80 years. We should take them over and position ourselves as indispensable node in the global high-tech manufacturing ecosystem. That is what will give us strategic leverage. Next slide. And if you think it is all about advanced manufacturing, you are mistaken. Look at the left side. It is about labor-intensive manufacturing. On the right side, it is about advanced manufacturing. We need both. India is too large. India cannot afford to ride on one horse. It has to ride on multiple horses. 28 states and 8 union territories. There is enough scope for some of them to do advanced manufacturing. There is enough scope for other states to do labor-intensive manufacturing. Our trade agreements have opened up labor-intensive manufacturing to market themselves in Europe, in UK, with these new trade agreements. And therefore, some states which are very good in technology, Karnataka, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, etc., can do advanced manufacturing. Some other states should do labor-intensive manufacturing and create jobs. India needs to do both. But one important point in the red color on the right side is, yes, the government has to support for India to become advanced manufacturing. But government support cannot be for free. Government support has to be in return for conditions imposed on the industry that you should become world class. You should be able to export within a reasonable time frame. This is how Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Japan became prosperous. If you want to understand this, read the book How Asia Works by Joe Studwell. Joe Studwell, How Asia Works. This is how North Asia became developed region. You don't become developed region only by providing support to your industry. Yes, you should, but you should also expect them to perform and be worldwide, globally competitive. That is a very important development when government provides support to industry for advanced manufacturing. Next slide. So if we want to grow, if we want to become a manufacturing player, first, yes, the world will not supply everything we need. We have to substitute imports. We have to find other countries or make them in India today or prepare today to make them in India tomorrow. Import substitution. That will lead to strategic resilience over time. Other countries cannot hold us ransom, but that's not enough. Other countries will continue to hold us ransom unless you have something which they need absolutely. That is what is strategic indispensability. And India has to pursue all these three at the same time. There is no luxury of time. It is like running a marathon and a sprint at the same time. This is something I have explained in great detail in the 16th chapter of the economic survey. Next slide. Now we move on to the third challenge, third priority for India, agriculture. Look at the chart on the left side. On livestock and fishing and aquaculture, our growth rate is very good, but overall agriculture growth rate is much lower at 4.7% in the last 5 years after COVID. And the reasons are many. The chapter on agriculture in the economic survey will give you the details, but the right side, if you see it. Now, if you click, you will see the right side. And you can see that we do a lot of things wrong. Fertilizer imbalance. We are over incentivizing rice and wheat. And the storage costs are very high. And we are not providing enough incentives to make climate resistant crops like millet, maize, and other millets. And edible oil we import, a food item we import edible oil and pulses, lentils, high protein. And we do not provide ready-made market for our farmers because we impose export restrictions, etc. We are more worried about the urban consumer, but not worried about the farmer, even though we say we are very worried about the farmers. If we can get agricultural policies right, they will add 0.5 to 1% to India's GDP growth every year. So it is a low-hanging fruit, but we have to look at the long term. We have to change the way we are implementing agriculture policies. They are holding our farmers back. Next slide will show you, because we are holding our farmers back, our agriculture exports, which is, by the way, a very wonderful achievement. 60 years ago, we were importing wheat. Now we are one of the world's exporters. From nothing, we have become a $50 billion exporting country in agriculture goods. Very good. But it has stagnated at 50 in the last 4 years. We have not gone beyond 50. There is plenty of scope. Climate change will affect Africa much more than it will affect India. Can we do better? Yes. For that, our policies have to change. Next slide. The fourth dimension is urbanization. Again, there is a special chapter in the economic survey, chapter 15, dealing only with urbanization. Our rules for building guidelines are very strict. We make land artificially scarce in a country which is already land scarce because we have a huge population. Per capita land availability is very low in India. On top of it, our restrictions on rules and regulations make land even costlier because of various political reasons you may be able to understand. And because of that, and secondly, we have also wanted to emulate the West in creating private modes of transport. Everybody wants to have a car as they become richer and income start rising. Cars and two-wheelers. India's size is so big that we cannot afford to have the same per capita vehicle ownership as the Western countries have. They have more space and less people. We have more people and less space. That is why commuting has become a nightmare in many of the Indian cities, both in terms of time taken and in terms of safety, health considerations. We have to accept public transport. For that, public transport has to become safe, reliable, and have last mile connectivity as well. Even developing countries like Brazil in Sao Paulo, they have mastered it. We are yet to master that. So if we are able to discourage private modes of transport, encourage public modes of transport, and provide seamless connectivity, including safety in the nights for women and elderly, then India will be able to reduce its energy dependence on the world and can also make our cities more livable. The third dimension is waste management, solid and liquid waste management, drainage systems, waste disposal and recycling, incineration and getting power out of waste incineration. Singapore does that. And last, all these three are possible only if we get the urban governance right, and only if people like us pay property taxes, are willing to accept higher tariff for electricity, willing to pay for water, and willing to treat common space as good as we treat our private space. Indians behave very well in metro stations. It is clean, people queue up, etc. But look at how we behave in bus stands. How crowded, how we jostle, how we push each other in normal trains. In metro rail, we behave very well. Why? These are all important behavioral changes we need to make as well. So both public sector, the government and the private sector, people have to change their behavior for India's cities to become livable. Unless cities become livable, we cannot have an intellectual ecosystem. Innovation will not happen. Cities are magnets for innovation, for talent. But our cities today are driving out people to other countries where there is clean air, less crowd, and services are reliable. And this is not only a government failure, it's also a citizen failure. Read chapter 15 of the economic survey. Next slide. The AI and employment challenge, which many of you will be thinking about. First of all, you shouldn't worry too much about it. There is too much of fear. AI companies are creating that fear because they think their investors will be happy when they hear that workers will be replaced and a lot of profits will come to companies. And companies, as when they make more profits, they give more bonuses and higher payment to the senior management. So senior management thinks they should replace workers with AI. But remember, a lot of things will work in laboratory, but may not work in that well in real life. And AI is still in that situation. There is a lot of hype and exaggeration in how well they work. And a company like Ford recently had to bring back its quality control officials when they thought they could replace them with AI, Ford Motor Company. And in X-ray and radiology, many Western hospitals thought AI will replace humans and read X-rays far better. No. Today, radiologists are still in demand, and in fact, they're commanding more salary than before. And in India's case also, similarly, there is a fear that software workers will be replaced 100%. It is not true. Planning, execution, review, and quality control are three elements of any job. It is the execution layer that is replaced by AI, possibly, not for all jobs. Planning and quality control and review still have to be done by humans. And in India, IT sector jobs are still relatively a very small portion of the overall labor force. It is important for us to focus on the third block on the right side, AI insulated jobs. So not losing jobs to AI in the IT sector, creating jobs that can work with the AI in the IT sector are important. Block 1 and block 2 in this slide, but they are relatively a small portion of the economy. The big portion is the third block. How to create jobs that will not be so easily taken away by AI, which is why labor intensive manufacturing matters, which you saw 2-3 slides ago. So our fear is coming from block 1 and block 2, but India has only about 10 million people working in IT directly or indirectly. But much of the people work outside the IT sector, and that is where we have to create jobs. Next slide. And that is why skilling is very important. On the left side, you see, that is why today, even if you are an economist, you are students of economics and students of higher learning, humanities, it will be nice if you, as a side vocation, pick up any one of these 5 skills. Electrical, plumbing, welding is not here, carpentry and fitting, mechanical engineering, civil construction, etc. You cannot be easily dispensed with. Today's Western European countries and Northeast Asia, Korea, Japan, China, Singapore, Taiwan, all of them invested in polytechnics and ITIs. We invested in IITs, not ITI. We should do that now. It's not too late. That is why in a recent podcast, I said 1 month ago, MBA, the era of MBA is over. MBA was a good education degree in the era of globalization. You needed to build efficient manufacturing by buying from different parts of the world. Globalization, integration was the theme. For the next 25-30 years, countries have to do manufacturing themselves. And for that, you need a skilled labor force. And therefore, we need to invest in polytechnics and ITIs, adopt them in the area, make them as aspirational as going to a business school or a university. What you see on the right side is what the industry should do. That is not your importance, but industry has to provide apprenticeship, work with academic institutions, provide them good wages, and also invest in modernizing ITIs, etc., and create role models. Odisha has done a wonderful job between 2016 and 2023, and the effect is still continuing. If you want to read what Odisha did in skilling, pick up a copy of the book When the Chariot Moved by Subrato Bakshi. He did a wonderful job creating a wonderful ecosystem for skilling and making skilling fashionable, acceptable, and aspirational among Odisha youth. It's a very inspiring story. Next slide. And mind you, in the world of AI, you can still be an important employee if you invest in behavioral skills, interpersonal skills, human skills, engagement skills. So what we need to teach our children in institutes of higher learning is not just academic. We need to reimagine what we teach. We have to go back to the basics of telling them how to read and how to write, because today in the social media, smartphone world, our children have lost the ability to concentrate, sit down for half an hour and read a paper, an academic paper of 10 to 20 pages without being distracted, without scrolling, without going from one tab to another tab, without flipping from different screens. We need to teach them to concentrate and be able to write. Remember, if you're using AI, the AI will give you answers, but the quality of the answer will depend on the quality of the question, the prompt. The quality depends on how well you are read. So to be able to use AI constructively and skillfully, you need to be able to ask the right questions and deep questions. And deep questions can be asked only if you have learned deeply yourself. So please read the chapter number 14 in the economic survey on why in the world of AI, reading and writing are more important than before, not less important. On the right side, one slide ago you saw labor-intensive skills are important. Labor-intensive services are important. Counseling, elder care, child care, culinary skills, sports coaching. All these things cannot be so easily replaced by AI. Human touch is important. These are all important areas of future jobs. Cybersecurity will become very important as well. So, in the world of AI, there are still important jobs. Some even IT sector will need cybersecurity, for example. Say, checking the quality of the code and the answers AI gives. But outside of IT sector, learning trade skills, vocational skills, interpersonal skills, and interpersonal services skills. If you know a foreign language, if you know cooking, and if you know one of the trade skills like electrical or plumbing or carpentry or being able to work with your hands, even if you are a student of economics, you will be the most sought after employee in the world. Next slide. Demographic dividend. Next slide. We have to basically, go back. We have to get the head, we have to understand that beneath the headline is India is demographic dividend is for the taking. Median age is below 30. We are going to get 1 to 1.5% growth rate from the demographic dividend itself. Yes, it is true, but it is not guaranteed. Because many states, the fertility rate has dropped, and obesity, elevated blood sugar are rising in India across the country. And mental health of the youth is becoming a matter of concern. So the National Family Health Survey number 6 is a huge wake-up call once again. National Family Health Survey number 5, published in 2020, was a wake-up call. this is also a wake-up call. India needs to take its preventive health very seriously. Next slide. You can see that 31% of Indian women are overweight or obese, 27% of men are, 1 in 5 have a blood sugar problem, 31% of the men in Kerala are having elevated blood sugar. India is a low income country, but already tracking the middle income in terms of metabolic burden and not the kind of levels that high income countries have. India is running with Brazil, Russia, and South Africa, not with Japan, Korea, and France in terms of metabolic health. We need to take our physical health seriously. If the body is healthy, the mind is healthy, and vice versa. Physical activity, connecting with elders, connecting with family members, learning to speak and write and read in local language, your mother tongue, and also taking some steps to set aside time for quiet reflection and digital detox every day are very important. So it's about going back to the basics. Next slide. In the West, Professor Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, Professor Jonathan Haidt wrote a book called The Anxious Generation, which is why many countries in the world are now thinking on and doing banning smartphones and social media availability, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, etc. for children below 15 and 16. Because it not only makes them economically unproductive and unable to concentrate, but also makes them anxious, prone to suicide and depression. India is unfortunately experiencing these problems before it became prosperous. At least the Western countries have already become prosperous. We are yet to become prosperous, but we are suffering from the diseases that prosperity and material wealth have brought to the West already in India. So this is an area where both children, teachers, and families have to take ownership and responsibility. It is not just a matter of public policy or government policy. Social health, mental health, and physical health are critical as much as labor market skills, trade skills, etc. So some things the policy makers have to do, something academic institutions have to do, but some things only individuals can do. They must take responsibility for this also. Next slide. And we are doing well. So now all these last half an hour, 40 minutes might make you feel intimidated. How are we going to handle all this? Are we equipped? Are we ready? Don't despair. India is a country that will continue to defy both the pessimist and the optimist. And we have come a long way. Go to any airport in India. It is better than many of the airports you will see in America. Look at the highways. And 10 years ago, we used to suffer from a lot of power cut every day. Today, power cuts have become rare. There are metro rails in 16 to 18 cities. And there is hydrogen train, there is Vande Bharat train. Indian ports now handle goods much faster. When a shipment arrives, it is out within 48 hours. We have grown from a $300 billion economy to a $4 trillion economy. And you will say, well, China has become 300 billion to 19 trillion, but they have also accumulated a lot of debt. We have not. So we have done a lot of things right, and we continue to do them as well. This slide shows you the economic reforms that the government in Delhi has done in the last 2 years since coming to office for the third term. Some of them you may be familiar with because they are in the headlines in newspapers. Some of them are below the headlines. They are important. Creating a Anusandhan National Research Fund, ANRF, RDIF, Research and Development Innovation Fund. Making the environment rules proportional to the pollution intensity of factories. And smart metering. And the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways on the left side, moving from cost-based bidding to technical score-based bidding, including technical competence, not just lowest tender. All these things are process reforms. The government has been doing them as much as reforms to taxation, etc., GST, etc. So, and look at the next slide. State governments are not far behind. Next slide shows you, we also, sorry, before I go to state level deregulation, this slide shows you India has been busy concluding free trade agreements with many parts of the world. This government did not do free trade agreements between 2014 and 19. From 2022 onwards, it has been doing a lot of free trade agreements. That's a good development. India has opened itself to foreign competition, and India is creating market opportunities for Indian exporters. Only when we allow imports, our industry will become competitive. We have to be exposed to competition. We can see it in classrooms, we are seeing it in Indian corporate sector and globally also. Healthy competition is needed, even among siblings, healthy competition. And healthy competition means exposed to what the world is able to make and sell. Unless our businesses can see it and face the competition, we will not improve ourselves. Competition and cooperation are two sides of the same coin. And free trade agreements service the India's requirement to become a manufacturing power by exposing our businesses to competition. Remember what I said, government should support advanced manufacturing, but only at the condition that our businesses become export competitive, world class. To become world class, you should know what the world class is. And that is what free trade agreements tell you, show you. And that is why these things matter. Next slide. I spoke about the importance of what is happening in terms of reforms. Reforms are happening silently in Indian states as well. Last year, we began the exercise of deregulation, going down to the details. If you want to read more, read chapter 16, part 2 of the economic survey. Important areas that touch the businesses of small and medium enterprises, small businessmen, women. They are the ones who are most impacted by regulations, inspection, compliance. And these deregulation measures provide them relief, give them the time and the bandwidth back to be able to focus on their businesses, rather than spending time worried about the government inspector coming and telling them what they are doing wrong and extracting a bribe from them. We are trying to attack these problems and challenges at the ground level through Indian states. It is going very well. It is continuing this year also. It will continue next year also. These deregulation measures will make states better places to do business, especially for small and micro and medium entrepreneurs, MSMEs. And that is also happening. So don't be overwhelmed by the challenges. We are attacking them from all perspectives: union, state, trade openness, process reforms. We are doing them. Next slide. And therefore, the only important thing is we have to do them fast. We have to change. We are changing. We have to change faster. Look at the last 100 years or 75 years. A lot of changes happened, whereas change was much slower before. So the change is coming even faster than the last 75 years. Before that, it was even slower. That luxury India does not have. Today's developed countries took a lot of time to develop. Even East Asia had more time than what India will have. So our governments, our people, our businesses have to realize the time is in short supply. We have to change ourselves now. Next slide. And what has changed and what is changing very fast is on the left side. Computing, solar power, batteries, genome sequencing, change is rapid. But interestingly, on the right side, what are essential are changing a little bit slower, not so-called high-tech. And these are important for manufacturing. And these are affected by rules, regulations, and policies. We have to get the right side quickly as well. And that is why governance is very important for the right side. On the left side, also important, but that is something that will happen sometimes through private sector initiative. But to get air travel right, construction right, we have to have logistics, road, power availability, So we need to focus on policies that will help the right side as well as the left side. Other countries are getting the left side right. We have to get both right at the same time. Technological areas is progressing. Even in India, we have done digital public infrastructure. No country, very few countries in the world can do UPI as India does. QR code payment. And we have high speed internet now. So millions and millions of us have smartphones now. And we are able to access our banking services 24 by 7. But these areas, so importance of getting manufacturing right is that manufacturing requires good governance. Software and services do not necessarily need good governance. To be able to produce something and ship it to a foreign country, you need good roads, good ports, reliable power, affordable power, factory space, land acquisition. All these things matter to have a factory and export. For software exports, it doesn't matter that much. That is why to get manufacturing right, good governance is needed. Good governance matters for manufacturing, and manufacturing incentivizes good governance. It's a mutual dependence. Next slide. Next slide. So for this to happen, stand here, please. For this to happen, Indian policy makers have to become entrepreneurial. It is not necessary for you people to focus on this right now, but if you are wanting to become a civil servant, write the UPSC exams, what kind of a bureaucrat you should become? You should become like an entrepreneur, risk taking, exercising judgment, not waiting for perfect information, not just maintaining stability and status quo. Again, if you want to read in detail, it is in chapter 16, part 2 of the economic survey. So Indian governments, state, union, local governments have to become more entrepreneurial, and that is required. Next slide. But it is not only a matter for the policy makers, it is for the private sector, it is for ordinary citizens. In the last 1 hour, you heard me talk about the importance of acquiring skills, trade skills. You have to do it. You have to worry about social media and smartphone usage. You have to learn how to uh, uh, control the time you spend. You have to learn how much you eat and what you eat when you eat. And you should behave appropriately in public spaces, keeping public spaces as clean as private spaces, and be as disciplined you are in metro rail as you are in regular in railway journey and in bus stands and so on. So there is plenty to do. Indian private sector has to invest. Indian private sector has to train talent. Indian private sector has to work with academic institutions. So this entire presentation is not just about what the government should do. This is about the challenges the whole country faces. And I also mentioned how students and teachers have to go back to the old skills of reading and writing. We have to reimagine education. So there is plenty to do for every segment of the society to become a developed nation by 2047. It is not just only the challenge or the responsibility of the government. These are challenges for the entire nation. If we all rise up to it, and remember, we don't have the luxury of waiting, then we will have realized the dreams of Viksit Bharat in 2047. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We will open the floor for a couple of questions from the audience, if there are. Yeah.
Hello, Saram sir.
Please speak up.
Sir,
I can hear you.
sir, as we know that the manufacturing contributes only about about 16 to 17% of India's GDP, whereas countries like China, they reached over 25 to 30% during their rapid development phase. So now, does India need a manufacturing-led growth model to achieve Viksit Bharat by 2047, or can it realistically become a developed economy with service-led model? What is your perspective on this, sir?
Yeah, the entire presentation also was about. Sorry? Hello?
Sir, you can continue, sir. Otherwise.
Hello?
Sir, you can continue,
Can you
sir.
hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Sir, we can hear you, sir. You can continue.
My apologies. Somebody in the sixth floor is doing some drilling. My apologies. But I heard you. I think the important thing is manufacturing is necessary. I spent the last 1 hour trying to show you that whether it is for finding the dollars to pay for our imports, imports will keep rising. And the world is not going to supply us everything we need because the world has become more hostile. And for the rupee to become stable, we need manufacturing. Manufacturing actually also improves public policy and public service delivery. Towards the end, I mentioned that. So manufacturing is something we cannot avoid. Some of the experts living overseas, Indians and non-Indians, say that India should continue to focus on services, but we now face question marks, big doubts on how much services exports will happen in the future because the world now has AI. They may not need as many programmers as before, even though all programmers will not go extinct or unemployed. But the world may not need so many of them. And without manufacturing, we cannot depend on the world to supply us everything we need because the world is become uncooperative, unhelpful, and they use choke points now to deny you what you want unless you have something to sell to them, which they need desperately. For all these reasons, manufacturing matters, and we have to do that. There is no getting away from that. And that is what the government has been trying to do with the PLI schemes, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Semiconductor Mission, Critical Minerals Mission, Oil Mission. And we are trying to incentivize manufacturing, the ANRF Anusandhan National Research Fund and the Research and Development Innovation Fund to boost R&D. All these things are recognition of the fact that manufacturing will become very, very important in the next 20 years if it is not already so. Thank you. Next question.
Saram, sir. It was a great talk, sir. And I had one question, especially in the start, when you had told that we should make sure we are not much in debt, and also that we need to acquire, we need to accumulate dollars to improve our currency value. Recently the RBI took out the LTCG for the NRIs, and that also they opened up counters for NRI deposits, and they promised a return. I mean, the returns are somewhere around 7%, where the RBI is going to compensate for the hedging costs which the banks are going to face.
Yeah. What is the question, please?
So the thing is that when you are promising returns of 7% and you are also compensating for the hedging costs, for a 5-year period, you're you're actually having the risk of having to pay back the money, and especially large amounts. How is the government planning to do it, sir?
Yeah, it's a good question, but ultimately it is a central bank, and a central bank doesn't spend any money when it has to print uh, uh, rupees, and it is after 5 years. Right now, in many of the schemes, when in the past when India announced similar schemes and raised dollars, the last time around, in fact, India was able to make more money out of it because the rupee strengthened. By the time we had to repay the dollars, if the rupee is stronger than what it is today, suppose we are at 90 rupees to the dollar, in 5 years' time or 85, we actually would have saved more money by doing this other than by not doing this. And secondly, central bank has its own tools to hedge itself without incurring much cost, whereas ordinary people will have to pay hedging cost. Reserve Bank of India doesn't have to. So it can hedge itself without any cost. So a central bank hedging is not the same as ordinary businesses and ordinary individuals hedging themselves against exchange rate depreciation. And we need the dollars right now, but because if we don't do this, then if the rupee were to become more than 100 rupees to the dollar right now, then I think or even worse, look at what is happening to Korean won and Japanese yen. Even those currencies which are much stronger than India otherwise are still depreciating. So this is a very difficult world, and much of the money in the world is going only towards AI, to China and the United States. And therefore, we had to do some things to get the dollars, without which you can't import crude oil, without which you can't import fertilizer. You have to pay for that. You need a pharma ingredients, API, to make paracetamol, crocin. So you need dollars now. We have foreign exchange reserves, but $150 billion of it is in gold, not easy to sell. And if you sell gold and raise foreign exchange, it has emotional connotations as well. That is why the Reserve Bank of India, in consultation with the government, announced a scheme, and hedging costs are zero for a central bank over the long term. And we need the dollars now, and it is quite possible that the time for repayment comes, the rupee may even be stronger if we do this now. And if we succeed in becoming a manufacturing player over the next 5 years, to some extent, we won't complete the whole journey in 5 years, then we will have actually made more money in the scheme than losing money. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have one more question from the Women's Campus in Anantapur. Please go ahead.
Saram, sir. Thank you so much for the insightful presentation. My question is about the power grid transmission capacity of India. So as you had mentioned that there is a rapid growth of AI, cloud computing, and data centers, it can also significantly increase electricity demand.
Yes.
So is India's existing power generation, transmission, and grid infrastructure adequately prepared to support this surge in power demand? And what measures from the government side is being taken to strengthen the grid capacity to ensure that the power supply is available? And in fact, is there any measures taken to integrate renewable energy as well to support India's ambitions in this regard?
2 or 3 things you should do. Much of it is happening. You are right. Good questions. Very good questions. The government is working on making sure that data centers come in areas where there is power surplus. Second, companies have to find their own captive sources of power, and there is some cutting edge research is also happening in terms of harnessing wave energy and recyclable solar energy, recyclable water, etc. for data centers. So I would urge you to spend some time on the internet, looking at the Ministry of Power website, looking at the website of the Central Electricity Authority, and that of Ministry of Renewables, etc., to see that, for example, we are saying now that if you are putting up a solar power generation plant, battery storage and pumped storage systems are mandatory, so that the solar energy can be saved and supplied during nights. And many states are beginning to invest in the grid level battery energy storage systems. So you need to follow the news releases of PIB related to Ministry of Power, or these days you can simply go to Google Gemini and say, please tell me in the last 2 years, what are the various initiatives that the Ministry of Power in India has taken to make data centers not consume too much of power? What are the conditions imposed on them? And what are we doing to make solar and wind energy usable when there is no wind and when there is no sun? Is India making enough investments in grid's ability to absorb solar? We also have distributed rooftop solar now. PM Surya Ghar is exactly to make distributed solar, which is much easier than grid level solar energy absorption. So we are doing multiple things. And therefore, a good, well-worded question. Take it as an exercise of for yourself or for your students, or if you are a teacher, how to construct a set of important questions, like as you did right now, and find out what has been done in the last 2 to 3 years or even longer to answer all these questions. But mind you, these are all not done. They are still work in progress, but much has been done. I gave you a few examples, but this is a wonderful topic for a classroom exercise as well. Back to you.
Thank you, sir. We have one more last question from Brindavan
Yeah, no
campus,
problem.
based out of
Please.
Bengaluru. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Brindavan campus.
Sai Ram, sir. My question is a bit of a geopolitical context, sir. Historically, New Delhi has been following the NAM policy, non-alignment movement, and recently they've been moving towards de-dollarization. So, do you think that it has placed India has placed itself in the US's radar of CAATSA, countering America's adversaries through Sanctions Act, and given that India is also actively engaging with US in PAC Silica with regards to semiconductor mission. So how does New Delhi balance the two?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Not easy to answer them in a short time that we have. And it's a question that is posed to MEA. We have been, as you have been seeing in practice, we are slowly, since the Galwan incident in 2020, we are now beginning to normalize relations with China. And we are also continuing, we are part of the PAC Silica. We have our own national semiconductor sovereign AI mission. And we are also striking agreements with several South American and African countries for rare earths and critical minerals. We are not non-aligned as we are multi-aligned. And the Prime Minister went to UAE recently and has created and has an agreement for strategic petroleum reserve, crude oil reserve in the UAE held on behalf of India. And we now recently, during this Gulf War, March and May, we told all households to shift from LPG to pipe natural gas. And the government has announced coal gasification as well. So these are all about reducing our dependence and vulnerability. And like, for example, this Sky, I'm forgetting the exact name of the company, the Skyroot, what they did by launching a launch vehicle successfully. Like this, there are multiple initiatives happening across the country, IITs, research parks in Chennai, and so on and so forth, some of which we may not be fully aware. And the Research and Development Innovation Fund and ANRF are vehicles for funding deep tech and space tech, etc. And that is why our defense exports have grown so much. We export BrahMos missiles to the Philippines and many other countries, etc. So in other words, and we have been concluding free trade agreements from as wide as Australia to the UK to European Union and in between the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And yesterday, when the United States announced some additional 10% tariff based on Super 301 investigations, India finds itself in the list of a list of 12 to 18 countries which only have 10% duty. So as you can see, we are also having a conversation with Canada for a trade agreement, even though under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, India's relationship with Canada went to a very low level. Now it has rebounded very significantly. So we are not non-aligned, we are multi-aligned, and we are straddling this world. And recently, the Prime Minister of Japan made a visit to India. And that is a very important relationship for us. And we continue to support Sri Lanka. We help them in the current natural disaster as well. And we have repaired our relationship with the Maldives recently. And Bangladesh is settling down as well in terms of relationship with India. So it is a difficult period. The old norms and playbook are no longer that relevant. Our Ministry of External Affairs is doing a very good balancing act across multiple considerations. I think you should also probably pick up a copy of Dr. Jaishankar's recent books as well and speeches. So it is a challenging world. We are multi-aligned and we will be an important middle power. We are working with other middle powers as well. And this is a work in progress. Thank you. Back to you.
Sir, a small question I would like to ask once again. Uh, the headlines are reading that India and EU have concluded the mother of all deals, right? Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little bit. Speak
Yeah,
up.
okay, right. So India and EU have concluded the mother of all deals, right? But EU is still enforcing CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. So how is India reshaping its trade strategy to shield our developing supply chains from this
Yeah.
green protectionism, sir?
Yeah. I think a good question. I think industry associations have been working on it for the last 3 years. And we have also been talking to European Union. Conversations are going on. They have exempted small and medium enterprises from some of the CBAM requirements. And there is also an assurance in the agreement that whatever concessions they extend to any other country within Europe or outside Europe on CBAM will be extended to India as well. And companies are also adapting. So these are all the multiple ways in which India is responding to CBAM, although we continue to tell the European Union that it is not in their interest. And that conversation will also be ongoing, but we have already gotten a few indications of flexibility, as I mentioned just now.
Thank you, sir. There are a lot more questions here, but in the interest of time, we will have to close the session.
Yeah.
That was truly a master class from Dr. Anantha Nageswaran, sir, who beautifully brought the Indian economy, the landscape. It was like someone, coming from a non-economics background, who would easily understand the concept so well. Thank you, sir, for your time. So we would like to propose the vote of thanks for this particular session for Professor Vishwanath Pandit Memorial Lecture. As we pull down the curtains, my first and foremost gratitude goes to Bhagwan Sri Sathya Sai Baba, under whose divine grace and guidance and blessings this entire event, from the invocatory Vedam this morning to this closing moment, has unfolded so seamlessly. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our chief guest, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran, sir, Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, for so generously giving us his time and sharing his depth of insight on India's journey towards 2047. His lecture has given us all, faculty and students alike, a great deal to reflect on and carry forward in our own academic and intellectual pursuits. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Professor B. Raghavendra Prasad, sir, the Vice-Chancellor of Sri Sathya Institute of Higher Learning, for his presence and continued guidance and support to this department. A special word of gratitude to Mrs. Krishna Pandit, whose gracious presence among us today means more than words. And having her here as we honor Professor Vishwanath Pandit's legacy is itself the truest tribute this lecture series can offer. My thanks also to Professor Raghavendra Raju, sir, Head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences and Dean of Student Welfare, for his warm welcome address and for steering this event with department. My thanks to Professor Gauri Shankar, sir, the Dean of Academic Affairs and Director of the Prasanthi Nilayam campus, and also all the other directors across the campuses, which include Anantapur, Brindavan, and Nandagiri, and also all our faculty colleagues who have joined us, all the staff and the students who have joined this particular session online and offline. I would be failing in my duty if I did not thank the many hands behind the scenes, those who have arranged this wonderful hall, coordinated the live stream, the multimedia department, and ensured every detail of this morning ran smoothly. Your quiet effort made this memorial lecture possible. Finally, to all of you in this audience, thank you for being here in such numbers, for your attentiveness, and for keeping alive the intellectual spirit that Professor Vishwanath Pandit so dearly nurtured at this institute. We will pull down the curtains for the session with Mangal Aarti. I would request Professor Raju sir to offer Mangal Aarti to Bhagwan. Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Satya Sai Hare भक्तजना संरक्षक भक्तजना संरक्षक पतिमहेश्वर ॐ जय जगदीश हरे शशिवदना श्रीकरा सर्वा प्राणपते स्वामी सर्वा प्राणपते आश्रितकल्पलतिका आश्रितकल्पलतिका आपद्बान्धवा ॐ जय जगदीश हरे मातपिता गुरुदैवमु मरियन्तयु नीवे स्वामी मरियन्तयु नीवे नाद ब्रह्म जगन्नाथा नाद ब्रह्म जगन्नाथा नागेन्द्राशयना ॐ जय जगदीश हरे ओंकार रूप ओजस्वी हो साई महादेवा सत्य साई महादेवा मंगल आरती अंदुको मंगल आरती अंदुको मंदर गिरिधारी ओम जय जगदीश हरे नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण नारायण ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण नारायण ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण नारायण ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम सत्यनारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा ओम शांति 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 समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शांति 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 जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय थैंक यू सर थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम
Thank you. Thank you.